Hey there, anybody who's out there watching this. What I'm about to do is I'm going to do a flip through of my graphic novel, Combat Fairies, and give it a commentary on some of the behind the scenes stuff and maybe even criticize some of my own work a little bit. This is Volume 1 of Combat Fairies. Volume 2 of Combat Fairies is soon to be available in print via Kickstarter. Check the link in the description for the pre-launch page. As of today, October 6th, the pre-launch is live, and the actual campaign is scheduled to go live on October 18th. So if you're catching it after then the link will be to the page. And if all goes well and you're watching this from the future after the campaign is over, hopefully I'll have a link on where you can actually buy the book at that point as well. This video is going to be super spoilery, so if you haven't read the book, now's not the time to watch this video. But lucky for you, both physical and print copies of Volume 1 are available on the Kickstarter with Volume 2 at the same time, so it's not too late for you to get caught up. So let's dive right in. Right off the bat, we'll do the cover. I drew this live on Twitch when the campaign for Volume 1 was off and running, and in some ways, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. But I will say, I feel like I kind of wish it went a little simpler. There's a lot going on there. I tiered out the color, faded things out. I think it helps. But yeah, I think you're gonna see something a little bit simpler for Volume 2. Let's dive in. Okay. This is a promo poster that I made for it. Introduction. I'm not gonna read any of this to you guys. We're just gonna flip through and do a quick first rescan. This is my cover. When I did the first issue of Combat Fairies, I did a print run of just the first chapter to help try to entice some people at cons and stuff, and purposely went really mysterious with them. Fairies show a lot of skin because they're kind of based on like the classic mythological interpretations with like 80s military movie gear put on top of them. But I didn't want to sell it on that, so I didn't want to lean too hard into that in the cover. Here we go, going right into it. We have the prologue. I'm not going to dive too deep into that. This was a bit of an afterthought, but I was glad that I did it. Yeah, Jesus raves. I'm pretty proud of that pun, I think. This is a kind of a cool opening. I'll give it that. My first spreads are fun. They're a pain in the ass, but they're fun. My one thing with this, though, I wish I did a lot more with the neon and the lighting. I feel like I could have done a lot more with this shot. I think the concept is a little cooler than the execution, if I'm being totally honest and self-critical. But whatever, it's still kind of cool. It's kind of crazy if you look at the well, both my, like, I've been a drawer my whole life, but if you look at these first early pages and you look at the later pages, you'll see how much I actually like improved over that. It's just the sheer amount of drawing, it was impossible not to. And you'll also notice some changes in the character designs of the fairies as well. Subtle stuff. They kind of evolved a little bit as I got used to drawing a little bit better. The hair tends to get more exaggerated. Some of the features a little bit more defined. Ayla's nose looks really weird in some of these early ones, but they change up pretty quick. Imps are a big part of this first chapter. You don't hear much of them again for a while after that, but they will come back. This first chapter was kind of inspired a lot by that first issue of Ninja Turtles, where it was really just a big mindless fight as a way of introducing the characters and stuff, so I kind of leaned into that. Black and white with color hair. Just me being all artsy and shit, why not? And this is a pretty fun hero shot. I'll pat myself on the back. This gas mask looking imp guy was inspired by Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. If you know Wizards, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you probably don't care. So we're going through. You'll see the way I drew these like blast lines and stuff. That kind of evolves over this one and then into Volume 2 as well. Drugs, werewolf. This werewolf fight is something that I had conceived of as a kid for just comic I used to draw for fun at that age. I never did do that story, but I snuck it into Combat Fairies here. I feel like this would be a really cool signature move if there was ever a Combat Fairies video game where she just spins around just like machine gunning the shit out of everything. This first one is particularly graphic and gory and fun and violent, but there's not a lot of plot in that first one. That kind of starts to kick in later on in Volume 2 here, or Chapter 2 here, sorry. A little kind of a Men in Black moment. and creatures hiding in plain sight, all that kind of stuff. Oh, where's well do we spread? I love my spreads. Spreads are fun, even if they don't all land 100% the way I always want to. They're cool. They're fun to do. This Cyclops guy was heavily inspired by Ray Harryhausen's Cyclops in Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. I think it is. Giant straws for our fairies. Well, not giant. Normal size straws for tiny fairies drinking beer. This second chapter is the only times I get to have the chance to have the fairies just purely having fun. They're always having fun when they're like fighting and shit, because that's just how they are. But like seeing them at rest, we don't see a lot of that. Chapter 2, we do a bit. Blood Rose Cemetery. I can't remember if that's a real cemetery or something I made up. I want to say I made it up, but I could be wrong. This is cool. Drudwin. He's a dead dryad, so he's all dried out and skeletal looking. I think he's a fun design. It's another one that I kind of, you know, if I could go back in time, I would do another pass at that probably. Bunch of the other fairies. We don't get to see too many of the fairies outside of our core team, but we got a glimpse of them in this chapter at least. These scenes are fun to write. They're not so fun to draw. They're a little repetitive on the drawing side of things. And then of course we got him watching Commando blow off some steam. Okay, shows where some of their influence of some of their weapons and stuff. Their weapons are a little more mortal-like than average. Okay, here we go. Here, the inciting incident. It comes in a little on the late side. In our time machine moment, will probably be to push this forward a little bit, but whatever. It's here. They go to Camp David, and we find President Hudson Hicks. He was kind of gross. Violence, gets shot, or did he? Maybe he's a double. He is in fact a double. But we're gonna build up to that. I could of course go a lot more in depth here, but I don't want to be here all night, and neither do you guys, I don't think, while you're watching this. Although, mention in the comments if you wish I did a deeper, more intense dive. Maybe I will commit to a multi-hour pass at this. So yeah, here's where they decide that they're gonna break the rules and they're gonna expose themselves to Addison. Mortals aren't supposed to know that fairies exist, but boom, now this mortal knows that they exist, and the world will never be the same. This, by the way, backtracking a bit, shots like this, it's tough finding ways to like frame the fairies. Just things like that are kind of fun. I get the excuse. Try to avoid having them lined up as much as possible sometimes. There's not a lot of options sometimes. I'm gonna assume that I copy and pasted that digitally. Just add the fairies. If not, very impressive, Dylan. Go me. But I don't think I did that. More flashbacks. I don't do that ever again after this one. I'll have a good heist. Do a lot of cool heisting in this first volume. Not as much in volume 2, a little bit. Volume 2 is a little bit more character driven. It's a little, it's setting up much bigger things, and there's a lot going on in it, but it's a little bit more about characters and where they're at and whatnot. Still lots of action though. Good amount of action. Look at these triplets. They're gonna come back. Could that be foreshadowing something? I don't know. Maybe. Cheese it. Gross. Okay, you know what? This looks more like a chef working on some baked goods than it does a nurse dealing with some babies. I don't know if that design is based on something or if I just winged it in a weird way. This, by the way, this chapter was a really fun one to draw because I think this character, Noah, the changeling baby, with all of his weird, bendy, stretchy limbs and everything, and just evil-looking baby face, was just way too much fun. And it was fun using his like limbs to like frame stuff or whatever too. Addison's another one. You notice Addison, the shape of her face changes over the course of the book as well. I was looking at finding her a little bit too. Although she's pregnant in this one, and she's not pregnant by the end of it, so maybe that's why she has a little bit less meat in the cheeks, maybe. He loses weight a bit between volume 1 and volume 2. Another spread is a fun one. Broken glass is a pain in the ass, but it's satisfying to play with. Ouch! Also, it's weirdly cathartic drawing blood spatter, especially when it's like black blood spatter, because it's just like, it's just there on the page as you do it. We won't read too much into that. I hope it doesn't mean there's something wrong with me, but I like that. And they find this owl, which is a fertility demon from, it's based on actual mythology. It's in Middle Eastern mythology, I think. I forget what country from offhand. But yeah, I had the idea when I was doing all my mythology research and I found him, I was like, oh, we gotta put an owl in there somewhere. There's too much baby stuff. The perspective on this floor, by the way, is so fucked. But it's okay, we can get by. This is one of my favorite covers I did. Chocolate Avenue, we're in Hershey, Pennsylvania, 666. We're in a bakery, or are we? I did this spread live on Twitch. This was one of the longest streams I ever did. I think it was like a 7-hour stream. Went to bed at like 5 a.m. that night. Horrible, horrible idea. But it turned out pretty cool. Gabby is a fun character. She spends most of her time naked. Except for her Crocs, so I guess technically she's not naked. So much only her boobs look like yams. I can't argue that. Right before I drew this, I read Eric Powell's Hillbilly, and the witches in that get very like distorted in features. So I already had this written, but I made her get progressively weirder looking as it goes. Picture effects, fun stuff. More dryads. Don't really do much with them beyond that. Little dragon guy walking by. A lot of talking on these pages. It's up to you guys how well it worked, but I think the fun part of having Cinia and Kiani trying to change Addison's hair during all this makes it a little more entertaining, hopefully. Big dramatic moment with her extra fucked up hair, ending on a joke, and then we're teasing these guys, the Gray siblings. Probably could have given myself a little bit more space to play with up there, but you know what, whatever. Accidents happen. My other favorite cover, the curse, or for Sluggothus. This is somewhat inspired by the Babelfish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but used to stay in like telecom link each of the fairies. So it's kind of like having that like bug in your ear, like you see spies have and stuff. The whole cartooning of your mouth there. Low angle shots are hard to draw. I recommend never doing it without reference. There's a few in this book that are very questionable. This one's not terrible, but there are a few that aren't as good. See, her face is starting to look more like she looks now. By the end of the book, they're all pretty consistent, but in those first few chapters, just a bit more. I'm not going to get into specifics, I don't want to spoil anything, but this cult that they meet in this bunker is was a major catalyst for what inspired me to continue on and do volume 2 and 3. There was a little something in it, and it was as I was doing it that I thought of it. So much so that I even threw in some background details a little bit to emphasize it even more. Drew this one on the stream actually too, or penciled it. I don't think I inked it, but I penciled it. I don't pencil, like just pencil on the stream too often, because like it's not very satisfying until you see it inked, because the pencil doesn't show up always the best on screen. The opportunity of these kind of effects early. I enjoy doing that stuff. It's fun. The whole concept of this bunker thing was kind of inspired by John Carpenter's The Thing. I wanted to have this whole someone's a killer, but who is it? Someone's not human, but who is it? Kind of deal. It's only a singular chapter, though. It's a longer than average chapter, but still, I had to cram a lot in there. So the pacing isn't maybe what I would necessarily ideally prefer for a John Carpenter homage, but I think it works. I think it's entertaining, at least. This one's narrated by Brietta, who is claustrophobic, so she's not having a good time in this bunker. As you can see, the sweat rolling down her face. Bogart, I think it is. There's a similar, I do something similar to this Warhol thing with Ayla's face in a future portion of the Combat Fairy story. Punching him, bloody nose, that's fun. A little mini nuke, as it would imply. Brietta's just had enough of this bullshit. That's gory and graphic in a fun way. He's a puka, and I gave him like skunk-like stripes because he's kind of a douchey character, so I thought let's make him something that maybe people don't love, like skunks. The Dark Fairies are really cool. If I can toot my own horn, I'm going to toot it for the Dark Fairies. They're cool looking. Yeah, you can see Addison's face is almost what it generally is now. Another spread. I feel like I could have got more chaos in here. I feel like I gotta amp this one up a little bit more. But it's not that it's a bad drawing, but I could have done more of it for sure. This whole story takes place during 2 concurrent wars, so I had to do at least one chapter that was like in the heart of a war zone. And it's kind of the not too distant future, so we got mechs and shit as well. It's kind of fun. Mostly just fun to draw, although I probably could have taken a bit more time in the design phase. There is a mech that shows up eventually that I did design a little bit more thoroughly, but yeah, just some creatures. Took a bunch of time fleshing out the world. I needed to make sure to show off some of it in here. Developed a lot more than what you actually see on the page. Another cool spread. I forgot to add shading on this purple one. Just not showing it too. Glowy eyes. That's fun to do. More magic effects. So these sorcerers, the Grey siblings, are kind of become more of a running joke. The fairies are getting their asses kicked. They're trying to kill Addison. And then one of them dies entirely, well, not really by accident. I guess Addison does it on purpose. She knocks the gargoyle down on top of her. But it's a little convenient as well. A little too easy, but that's kind of the point. There's still one left to fight another day. This unicorn ranch was a pretty early idea as well, I think. It's all sickly. This gag, this comes from another that same comic I did when I was a kid that I almost did the werewolf thing. I did do this with the guy shooting a seagull. Opened a comic with a nice tranquil shot and then bam, blow it up, make it all gory and stuff. Fun times. So yeah, this is maybe my favorite chapter. It's kind of a sidestep, side adventure, barely has anything to do with the overall plot, but it's entertaining. Ogres are keeping unicorns on their ranch so they can hunt them, and the fairies don't like that. And there's a good gag too. I also like the mood lighting. The salamander in a stained glass jar. And look at that. ogre sex. One thing I do wish I did differently, though, I didn't think of it at the time. I kind of wish I made her physique a little closer to his. Yeah, I mean, like, she's not attractive, but I kind of fell into that trap there, that like king and queen's trap a little bit, where you know she's thick, but she's not like, you know, she could do better than him, is what I'm trying to say. And we see that a little too often, so I should have caught that myself. But oh well, live and learn. Next one will not make that mistake. And then here they are getting just fucking with the ogres. It's fun. Forget what that creature is. Its pet, Farfel. Farfel, by the way, is named after a dog from Seinfeld. I forget what the hell that creature is, though. I want to say it's something from Norse mythology, but I forget. But it is something. And yeah, the big reveal. They killed Paw. Jerry DeCopra with his talking tattoos. I hope I'm not an asshole when I say this is a fun idea. I like this. Some of this stuff is just fun and entertaining. This is a terrible low angle shot of my face. There we go. And criticizing. I don't like it. I don't like it. Fuck that one up. 30 Rockefeller Center. Copy pretty closely. Sometimes I just I basically like take a photo, trace the main geometry, and then I mess around with it a little bit to make it more, you know, my style or whatever. But that's how a lot of it comes from. To help with the accuracy, save a little bit of time on vanishing points. Stirs instead of blends. Ah, genius. Yeah, so they Frankenstein the fairies together to become a full-size person. Kind of wish I messed with it. I was torn because I was like, if I make distort her face too much, then how's she gonna really blend in? But then at the same time, maybe it'd be funnier if I distorted it more. Doesn't last too long though. Back to normal. They're beating the shit out of him. Aside from the fairies, there are some characters in this book that do return. Acid and the fairies are the obvious ones. Some others will make some cameos. Question is who? Zombie bellhops. Because why not? Again, another heist one. This is probably my second favorite one. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out the logistics of the heist for this, but and we use Karpa. Karpa also appears in the animated short that I made. This intended to be a prequel to this, Peer Pressure. Check that out on the YouTube if you haven't already. Featuring music by the Dolly Rots. And here they are, the Fates. They have captured the Fates. There's obviously a lot of work that went into making this book. And this chapter here was a really fun one to write and a really quick and easy one to draw. And I already knew what my fates looked like, because they were going to just be these eyes on like giant optic nerves, and they would be quick and easy to draw. So I knew that I was writing something that was going to be like a really fast one to put together. But I felt like I earned it. So there's a lot of work that went up to this chapter, and there's a lot of work that comes after this chapter. So I was pretty happy to give myself an easy one for a change. And just the idea of like them interrogating fate itself, I always thought that was pretty cool. One thing with this layout, I think this is a cool layout. You're supposed to read this page, then this page. I feel like the way it's so mirrored, it could be mistaken as a two-page spread, and I could see somebody reading across by accident, in hindsight. So maybe I could have done that a little bit better. This artful extraction courtesy of Stephen Aarons and Weston Bramford. Something about that, I don't know why, but I just felt always so very comic booky. I mean, the whole thing's a comic book. For some reason, something about that image always stood out to me. I don't know why. This thing has a cool idea that I don't really do much with. But the idea it's like this is haunted by the spirit. This is like a where they used to grind down fairies for their fairy dust, and it's like haunted by the ghosts of all these fairies. And they talk about it, but like I feel like I could have done a bit more with that. Could have been kind of cool. Major cities in Canada as we're flying across from one coast to the next. Gearing up for our big climax. And yet another heist, because Kiani and Cinia are going to break Addison into Air Force One. So that she can try once again to kill the president that she blames for the war. Big moment. Ripping Ayla's wings off. There was another moment I had planned in the early stages of the plot. The plot went through a lot of changes since then, so I don't know how similar the rest of it would have been either, but there was a very big third act moment that got replaced with Ayla's wings getting torn off. Of course, we got the flower. Oops, the flower is going to wake up Strathcona, the dragon, named after a neighborhood. I was living in East Van during the entire making of this in Vancouver. Strathcona is a neighborhood, I guess you would call it, nearby. Big reveal: Hudson Hicks was an actual monster, or it appears to be a physical actual monster. Is the idea. He looks as gross on the outside as he is on the inside, is kind of what we're going for here. And he's so pathetic that Addison can't bring herself to kill him. Turning point for her character. And now the plane's going down, and of course, Addison's got to give birth. And here we go. Our last chapter. And there he is, Bailey, little bundle of joy himself. Now, the intent with Bailey is not that this thing actually climbed out of her entirely intact. It's more that he was birthed and then instantly grew to this size. This was always the idea. Which I would think would be somewhat self-explanatory, because you would assume like how he's bigger than Addison, so how else could this work? But I have had those questions. So I do address that in a future chapter of Combat Fairies to make it clear to people. But yes, a 10-foot tall person did not grow out of a 6-foot tall person. Just saying. This is one that this page looked kind of shitty in the original digital release, and it always bothered me. So I went in and I added all these warp effects and made it a little bit more artistic. I like it a lot more now. Climax to this, I'm pretty proud of. I think there are some things I think I could have streamlined along the way, but I think when we get to our big payoff here, I think it comes together pretty well. There we go. Gavin Gray is back for his revenge on Addison. And she just blows him in half. Instantly, doesn't even think about it. Doesn't have time for his shit. These ones can be a little monotonous to draw as well, but they're also kind of fun. Find all those action poses. Reference a lot of kung fu shit. And now here's Addison being Ayla being all badass using a propane tank to launch herself since her wings don't work. Well, something don't work, not even there anymore. X-ray vision of our dragon as our fairies navigate inside of him. Ready to blow the shit out of his heart. Her heart, I should say. And it works. She has a heart attack, but it also triggers the thing that her fire breath comes from, which means she's about to go critical. Just as Addison kills her baby boy with the unicorn horn that saved her life earlier in the story. There we go. Oh, and look, a unicorn Pegasi, which has been teased throughout the whole thing, whether or not these exist. And Canny has spotted one. An epilogue 7 months later. Addison is now in prison, and we're setting up what is going to come in Volume 2. And at the end, we find out the fairies are still in touch with her. There we go. And then there's special thanks. So yeah. Check out Combat Fairies. It's available digitally already on Global Comics and Amazon, but hit the link in the description and you'll find where you can actually back the book on Kickstarter, get your hands on a physical copy of Volume 2 and Volume 1 if you want to as well, or you can just buy it digitally through there and still help me reach my goal, get more of these Combat Fairies adventures out there. It's a trilogy altogether, so we got 1 down. Number 2 is on its way, and number 3 will be pretty close behind it, hopefully. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.